almost, I think 15 participants are there. We'll start. Meantime, let others also join in. Right?
Right, we can start.
Yes. Let's start. I'm sure others will also join in the process. So
Sure.
welcome Shweta Ajmera to the team. I welcome all the participants also to the team. Shweta is one of the finest faculties that we have in the international tax domain, and I heard her in one of the WRC platforms. So I thought in, I will invite her to our this small forum wherein people can be benefited out of the international tax knowledge and the information. So Shweta is a chartered accountant. She has been long time into practice and she has a good knowledge of this income tax and other platforms. So welcome Shweta Ajmera to the group, and I hand over the session to you. Over to you now. You can start.
Thanks, Archana. Getting voice properly now.
Yes, we are able to hear you.
Good noon, friends. Hope you all are safe and fine in this pandemic. It's really so positive that we all are gathering together and start learning out of this pandemic. As please shift to next slide. As Kalidas ji has already said that it is for the good that our nature takes moisture from the earth to give us back. Same way our government take taxes from us to give us back. That's why taxes are being collected and then government give us back in the form of different services to the public. Now, as we see, cross-border transactions are playing a very important role in our economy. Daily cross-border transactions are increasing. And after liberalization, that is 1991, different policies have came and foreign exchange transaction has increased a lot in our economy. And therefore, there is a need to understand Section 195 of the Income Tax Act, which covers the provision related to TDS on payment being made to non-residents. Friends, basically TDS is a very favorite topic of chartered accountants. Generally we have seen clients used to call us and say whether tax would be deducted on this payment or not. Tax deduct hoga ki nahi hoga. And specifically in the case of foreign exchange transaction, the things have completely changed. Please go to next slide. Friends, this is an image which is being created. There is a finance manager of ABC Limited. He is a good friend of mine. He received a foreign company's invoice and said that what to do. Many things I have to do while looking at the foreign exchange invoice. So he was thinking whether to withhold tax. Now, friends, a new term which has came is withhold. We say TDS, that is tax deducted at source in Income Tax Act 1961, but double taxation avoidance agreements, that is DTAA, refers TDS as withholding taxes. The name has just changed, but the applicability is certainly similar in any of the laws. What treaty provisions would be applicable? What are the contradictory rulings? When we will go to what is the definition of the income which is subjected to tax in section 195, there we have contradictory rulings, specifically the Volkswagen case ruling which has recently been came, that we will go through. Then we have the expense disallowance penalties, many things are there, so that we have to look into. Now the friend was confused what to do. I said simple solution, go to your chartered accountant. He or she will guide you properly for 195. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next. Now section 195. What is the beginning? Whenever we start learning any section, what is the base behind that? What is the beginning behind that? The section has been incorporated by CBDT White Circular 152 dated 27th of November 1974. What CBDT said is that Non-resident people, those who are not resident of our country, they move to other countries, and after they have moved from our country, it is very difficult to collect taxes from them. Therefore, first point, which is tax to be collected at the earliest point of time, therefore this section has been incorporated, and non-resident do not have more assets in India so that we can collect taxation from their assets. Therefore, CBDT has this circular explained the importance of section 195. Next slide. Further going, authority of advance rulings. They have also said some points. Authority of advance ruling has specifically emphasized that department must not be put to the hassles of recovering taxes from non-residents at the time of assessment. Therefore, they have incorporated this section 195. Then next slide, Vodafone ruling. We all are aware with the Vodafone ruling. In Vodafone ruling, there was an indirect transfer. Then also section 195 was made applicable. And in the ruling, they have said that rather than going to the regular assessment case, first we will recover the taxes from the assessee. It would be more beneficial for the government. Next slide, please. Now, why to discuss section 195? We have seen the background behind that, but the specific impact is, it is impacting deductor, it is impacting deductee, it is impacting we people, chartered accountants. Because if we are not complying properly for 15 CB certification, then there is a penalty on chartered accountants as well. Scope has expanded retrospectively because after the judgment of Vodafone, they have changed section 9(1)(I) definition, and therefore the scope of business connection has been expanded retrospectively. There is an extraterritorial operation. We have dealings with other countries. Therefore, we have to look into the aspects of extraterritorial operations. And specifically, tax department eye is on the international payments. Whatever payments you are making, tax department needs details of those payments. And from those payments, like how much foreign direct investment is coming or how much investment we are making, department is majorly concerned with that. For this, different aspects have been covered in FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act. When we will look into 15 CA/CB compliances, there we will see how tax department has changed these forms. And most important thing is, there is always a controversy for remittances procedure. Our bankers demand 15 CA/CB, in spite there is no requirement, or sometimes they do not need 15 CA/CB, in spite there is a requirement. Next slide. Now, complete overview of section 195. Section 195 is divided into 195(1) to 195(7). Mainly, the important section is section 195(1). Whole discussion of ours would be focused on 195(1), that is scope and conditions of applicability of section 195. Section 195, 2, 3, and 4 covers about lower withholding of taxes, and recently government has issued notification because of this COVID-19 pandemic. What would be its effect? We will look into it. Then 195(4), that is about lower withholding certificate. 195(5), CBDT has power to issue notifications, rules in this regard. 195(6), to furnish the information regarding 15 CA and CB. 195(7), this is also an important part of 195, but till now board has not issued any application. Like board has said that we will give certain assessees who would be covered under 195(7). Then last is 195(A), grossing up of tax. Friends, generally happens that whenever we make foreign remittances, the other party do not agree that we will deduct tax on it, and therefore they say that the tax liability would be of the payer and we are not going to bear any tax liability. Section 195, next slide please. Going into depth provisions of section 195(1). We have to read line by line. Any person, who is person, we will see in next slide. Whatever I have highlighted, we will see in the next slides. Any person who is responsible for paying to non-resident. means person, anyone can come, but the payment is made to a non-resident. It is not being a company, but includes a foreign company. Why they have distinction given, that we will see. Any interest is covered or any other sum chargeable to tax under the Act, not being income chargeable under the head salaries, shall at the time of credit of such income to the account of payee or at the time of payment, whichever is earlier. This we generally follow. In cash or by issue of check or draft or any other mode, he will deduct income tax thereon at the rates in force. Many things we have to look into. Next slide. Analyzing section 195(1). First important point, any person responsible for paying. Now what is payer? Who is the payer? Any person. Now where the person is being defined in Income Tax Act, section 231 of the Income Tax Act gives definition of a person, an individual, an HUF, company, firm, AOP, BOI, whether it is incorporated or not, local authority, artificial juridical person not falling above would be covered. Person includes all these people. So whether person includes non-residents, yes, friends. Non-residents, we have, hello. Non-residents are also covered. Whether it includes person having no income, hello.
Yes, you're
Yes,
audible.
ma'am. Continue.
Yes. Okay, so whether it includes a person having no income, that is generally we see charitable trust, they don't have any income, or there are persons who are specifically given under section 10 or other persons, whether they would be included while deducting TDS. Yes, those persons are also included. Now, one most important point to cover is whether foreign company having a POEM in India, that is place of effective management in India, would get covered. Yes, it is also covered because once a foreign company has any POEM in India, it becomes resident in India under section 6 of the Income Tax Act. Now, friends, there is one specific amendment, section 6(1)(a), being covered by the Finance Act 2020. What they covered is that there are stateless persons, those having income outside India, and they are not resident in any other country. Therefore, those stateless persons are getting covered, and their income, like while making payment to them, whether we have to deduct TDS or not, that is a issue now. Like whether they will be treated as resident or they will be treated as not ordinarily resident. That point we have to consider. Next slide, please. First, we have seen any payment payer. Now payment made to non-residents. Now we are making payment to a non-resident. Who is a non-resident? Whether it includes non-resident individual? Yes. As per FEMA also. Whether it will include resident but not ordinarily resident. For resident and not ordinarily resident, there are only 3 sections which states that in these sections they would be treated as non-resident. Those sections are section 92, 93 and 168. In these sections, if they are classified, then non-resident, not ordinarily resident would be treated as non-resident as they would be treated as not ordinarily resident. Section 6(1)(a), yes, because of the Finance Act 2020, they have classified stateless persons who are citizen of India and whose income exceeds 15 lakhs as not ordinarily resident. There is no clarification in this regard, and we cannot say whether they would be treated as non-resident or not ordinarily resident because of the stateless criteria. Only option to us is to be conservative and to deduct TDS. Friends, my aspect, like it's my way that if we are confused whether the tax would be applicable or not, better to go for the 195(2) certificate, or if it is not, then we can deduct TDS. Now, foreign company, whether it will include foreign company or not, then CBDT has by its notification number SO 3039E dated 22nd of June, specifically classified that for this section, foreign company would be treated as a non-resident. That is for section 195. In this circular, they have included this point. Next slide, please. What are the unique features of section 195? We are specifically focusing that TDS on remittance made to foreign people, okay, foreign remittances. Now, how these are different from the section 194, we specifically follow in our day-to-day life, like we are making payment to a contractor, then we deduct TDS. There we have certain things like in 194C, there is a concept of personal payments. If we are making payment which are of personal nature, then tax is not deducted. But this proviso does not apply for section 195. For section 195, whether the payment is in the nature of personal payment or whether the payment is in the nature of other payments, we have to deduct TDS. There is no threshold criteria for deducting TDS. For a single rupee, if you are making remittance, you have to deduct TDS. We do not get confused with 5 lakh limit which is given in 15 CB form. That is a reporting limit. For deduction limit, there is no limit given in the Income Tax Act. Unlike other provisions, TDS provision, section 195 uses a word chargeable to tax. But if we will look into section 194, that is normal TDS provisions, there the word which is being used is we have to deduct TDS. They don't use chargeable to tax. Now, whether all payers are covered, yes, that we have already seen. It's multidimensional. Why it's multidimensional? Because when we will make payment to non-residents, we have to look at Income Tax Act. We have to look at DTAA, Double Taxation Avoidance Agreement. And now from 1st of April 2020, 29 countries have accepted MLI, multilateral instrument, that we will cover in some slides. What is this and what is concept behind that? Therefore, we have to look into multilateral instrument as well, along with the details which are referring to. Next slide, please. This we have already covered, that is payments which are covered is any interest, but 3 interests which are given in 194 LB, LC, LD are not covered, or any other sum chargeable under the provisions of the Act. We have to discuss more on this part, that is what is meant by other sum chargeable to tax. Please, next slide. In Income Tax Act, while determining chargeability, first important section is section 4. Section 4 determines the chargeability of the Income Tax Act when income tax is being charged. Then we have to refer to the scope of total income. Because in Income Tax Act, we don't have been given that this is the income and this much of tax would be imposed. They say deemed to be taxed, accrue or deemed to accrue in India, received or deemed to be received in India. A different concept they have brought in under the Income Tax Act. Then section 6, residential status, very important. Until we know the residential status of the assessee, whether he is resident or non-resident, we cannot deduct tax. Then citizenship based. Now friends, till now what happened is that we have either you are resident of that particular country or either you are citizen of that country, because USA follows concept of citizenship. If you are citizen of USA, then you are taxable there. But India follows residence concept, that is if you are resident in India, then your global income is taxable in India. But from this Finance Act, India has also adopted citizenship criteria 6(1)(a). This section is a complete different section which says that if stateless person, that you would be treated as resident, but resident and not ordinarily resident. So residential status plays a very important role. Section 7 and 9. Whatever scope is defined in section 5 is bifurcated in section 7 and section 9. This section we have to look into all these sections while determining any sum chargeable to tax. Next slide, please. What section 4 says? Income tax shall be charged at the rates for that assessment year in accordance with the provisions of Income Tax Act 1961 in respect of total income of every person. We have assessment year criteria, that is the previous year income would be taxable in assessment year of every person. Every person definition we have already discussed, section 231. Whether every person includes non-resident assessee as well? Yes, non-resident assessee are part of every person being an individual or as a company if it is not a natural person. Next slide, please. Section 5, 6, 7, and 9. Now, Section 5, subsection 2 covers the scope of the total income of the assessee. Whenever we are making payment to non-resident, we have to see whether that income of non-resident is accrued in India or deemed to be accrued in India, whether he has received that income in India or deemed to be received in India, and that is specifically given in section 7 and 9 of the Act. Next slide, please.
Shweta, we are losing your voice for in between.
Hello.
We are losing your voice in between somewhere.
Now it is fine?
Yeah, now it is fine.
Okay. Now any sum chargeable to tax. Section 90, subsection 2 of the Income Tax Act says that rates given in the Income Tax Act or the rates which are given as per DTAA, that is treaty, whichever is beneficial to the assessee would be applicable. Therefore, while making the remittances, the rate of tax would be rates in force or DTAA rate, whichever is beneficial to the assessee. Therefore, in the Act for business and profession income, we have to refer 9(1)(I) section. In that regard, in treaty, there is an Article 5, 7 and Article 14 of the treaty. Same like capital gains, we have to look into 9(1)(I) plus section 45. And in treaty, we have to look at Article 6 and 13. Same, we have salary, dividend, interest, royalty, fees for technical services. For this, 9(1)(I) to 9(1)(7) is being given in the Income Tax Act. And in treaty, we have Article 5 to Article 15, in which these incomes are covered. Therefore, when we will look at the rates in force are given in 115A plus Finance Act Part 2 we have to refer. Next slide, please. Now, Section 9. Now, as we have discussed just now, that Section 9 we have to cover. So 9(1)(I), what it covers business connection. If the non-resident has business connection in India, then his income would be deemed to be accrued in India. Now, what do you mean by business connection in India? This is a biggest issue for interpretation. There is no specific definition or clear definition which is being in the Income Tax Act, and therefore we have to look at the definitions which is given in the judgment given by different courts. Now, what courts have defined is that it should not be an occasional activity for a single day. If you have done business, then it would not be covered. Friends, here I would like to discuss one case, that is Formula 1. There was a World Championship Limited. They have came to India. They have organized play activities, race activities just for 5 to 7 days. And then they went out. Here court held that they have permanent establishment in India. Somewhere we correlate business connection and permanent establishment together. In Income Tax Act, we refer to term 9(1)(I) business connection, and in the treaty, we refer to term DTAA permanent establishment. So Formula 1 case was that for 7 days, if you have held any business in India, you have permanent establishment in India and tax was deducted for that transaction. Next is income attributable only to operations. This attribution plays a very important role. because in case of business connection, we have to look at income. We don't have to look at the sales figure. So sales minus expenses, whatever be the net income the person has earned in India, that much is taxable in India, and that would be taxed at 40% plus surcharge plus the cess. Then income due to, this is most important. Whenever we look at business connection, we look at dependent agent and independent agent. If you are dependent agent, means you are completely based on that non-resident. Therefore, in case of dependency status, you are treated as having business connection in India. In case of independent agent, it is not treated as business connection in India. But friends, with the application of MLI, multilateral instruments which has taken place, things have changed for dependent agents. We will look into that slide. Now, significant economic presence. This is considered in business connection, but till now it is not made applicable and it has been deferred by the Finance Act 2020. Next slide, please. Now, 911, this was direct income business connection. There is a concept of indirect transfer. 91I explanation 5 says that if you have transferred any asset, which is a capital asset, being a share or interest in a company or any entity, which is registered outside India. Vodafone was registered outside India and the sale of shares was also done outside India. Then also the shares were deriving their benefit from Indian assets and therefore that was treated as indirect transfer and being taxable in India. And retrospectively, this explanation has been inserted in 91I of the Income Tax Act. Next slide, please. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, did she change?
Salary.
Shweta, we lost your connection for a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes.
Ma'am, she is asking to change or move to the next one. Next slide. Yeah.
This was 91I, business connection with indirect transfer. This is 91II, that is salary. Salary is deemed to accrue in India if the services are rendered in India. Suppose I am employed in any company right now. I am rendering services, but I am a non-resident. Then after becoming non-resident, because I have rendered my services in India, therefore it is deemed to accrue in India. Plus, after retirement, whatever pension I am getting, that would be taxable in India because the salary was deemed to be accrued in India at the time when I have earned that salary. Salary is paid by government to Indian citizen is always deemed to be for services outside India would always be deemed to be accrued in India. Next slide, please. This is interest, royalty, and fees for technical services. 91, 5, 6, and 7. What it covers is that here a different way of interpreting the income in regard to interest, royalty, and fees for technical services. These three income are deemed to be India if these are paid to non-resident by government. If Indian government is paying these three incomes to non-resident, then it is deemed to be accrued in India. If Indian resident is paying to a non-resident, then we have to see that whether business carried on outside India for earning income from source outside India and for non-resident who is making payment to another non-resident, if these are for carrying on business in India. Therefore, we have to look at who is the payer. On the basis of the classification of payer and how much income is being accrued in India, the income is being calculated for interest, royalty, and fees for technical services. Next slide, please. Tax is determined on the basis of sum chargeable to tax. If the sum is not chargeable to tax under section 9(1), then the tax is not deductible. This is a clear-cut point. It is not deemed to accrued in India. It is not received in India. Chargeable to tax is determined on the basis of whether income is received, accrued, or deemed to be received in India. Now we have to look into the characterization of income in the hands of non-resident. Characterization of income is very important. Characterization is that whether income would be classified as business income, whether income would be classified as interest, royalty, or fees for technical services. Why characterization is important? Reason being, we have to look into DTAA, that is treaty aspect as well. And in treaty, we have to look at the specific articles over there. And then we have to determine the rate of taxation being applicable as per the Taxation Act and the rate of taxation being applicable as per the DTAA. Next slide, please. Further, now case laws. As we have seen that if the payment is taxable, then we will deduct TDS. What in case there is a composite payment? Composite payment means some element is taxable and some element is not taxable. For example, in case of business related payments, we have to look into net profit. But what happened is that in case of Transmission Corporation of AP Limited, it's a very old decision in 1999. Courts held that tax is deductible on the gross amount. Assessee is not eligible to determine the net profit. Then further, court has determined in Google India Private Limited, if you want to deduct tax at a lower amount, then apply for lower deduction TDS certificate under section 195 subsection 2. Now what happened is that further the matter went in Samsung Electronics. Here also High Court held that to deduct arises the moment there is remittance made to non-resident. So once you are making the remittance, until you have obtained section 195(2) certificate, you have to deduct tax. Therefore, till now, till the decision of the decisions given in Transmission Corporation, Google India, or Samsung Electronics, what they say is that you have to deduct tax on gross basis. That is, whatever amount you have remitted, you have to deduct TDS. Please, next slide. Any sum chargeable to tax in GE India Technology. First time courts have came out with a principle of proportionality. What they said is that if you are 100% sure that tax it would be deducted on net amount and not the gross amount, then you can obtain 15 CB certificate from your chartered accountant, and from the net amount you can deduct TDS. But generally courts do not follow these rules and they prefer gross amount basis only. And if you want to deduct on net amount basis, then you have to apply for lower withholding certificate under section 195(2). Next slide. Therefore, after all these decisions, and specifically after GE India ruling, CBDT has came out with two circulars. One instruction which they said is that if no application under 194(2) is made and there was SSC failing to deduct the TDS, in that case, default would be treated as only the net amount, sum chargeable to tax. They cannot impose liability or disallow the expenses fully. Suppose 1 crore rupees payment is made and tax is deductible only on 20 lakh rupees. Then sum which was chargeable to tax is 20 lakhs and disallowance would be of 20 lakhs. They cannot disallow 1 crore rupees. Next circular which has came is that, sorry, I have covered the next one, that is disallowance. The first one covers the default amount under section 201. That is the TDS regarding interest rate, 1% and 1.5. Therefore, in both decisions for reducing the rate of interest for non-deductible to be taken as some chargeable. Hello.
Ma'am, please continue from CBDT circular number 3,
Yeah.
2015. You were not audible.
Neelam,
Yes.
if meanwhile I am not audible, please remind me that time
Yeah,
itself.
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So some chargeable to tax here after the GE India ruling, there were one instruction and one circular which has came out that suppose, for example, I have to make remittance of 1 crore rupees. This is a gross. How much sum is charged?
Again, you are not audible, ma'am.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Shweta, you are not audible.
Hello.
Yeah.
Now audible?
Yes.
Ha.
Okay. So in this rulings, after GE rulings, CBDT has issued instruction and they have said that only on the amount, sum which is chargeable to tax, on that amount only interest as well as disallowance will be made. Next slide, please. This is most important thing which we face in our day-to-day life. If a resident is buying a flat from non-resident, then in that case, whether we have to deduct TDS on the whole gross amount or on the net amount only, court has given unfavorable decision. That is, you have to deduct on the gross amount itself. Non-resident has sold his flat in India for 2 crore of rupees. Department says that you have to deduct on 2 crores. You are not eligible to determine the capital gain amount. Therefore, in this case, we have to go for 195.2 or 195.3 certificate. Next slide. Volkswagen ruling. Friend, this is very important ruling which has came. They have brought in a concept of intangible business connection, this which we have heard for the first time. ITAT Mumbai held in this case that the assessee is having a intangible business connection in India. Volkswagen Finance along with Audi India had organized an event in Dubai and had invited Hollywood star Mr. Nicolas Cage and had paid fees of $440,000. The event was held in Dubai, was to attract Indian customers. Around 150 Indian customers were invited for the event so that they can buy the Audi car. And this event was focused for Indian customers only. Therefore, ITAT Mumbai have ruled that in this matter, tax would be chargeable under section 195 of the Act, and the assessee has not deducted TDS and assessee was treated as a defaulter. Now, friends, believe I am making a payment to US actor who is staying in US, but he has performed in Dubai. There was no business connection or indirect business connection, but still our ITAT member is of the view that it is treated as intangible business connection. When we read the whole judgment, why he came to this view, his view is that now the way of doing business has completely changed. Previously, what happened is that we don't have online business connection, but now we have everything online or we are going from one country to another, and therefore there is a concept of intangible business connection, and therefore it is taxable under section 195 of the Act. Next slide, please. Most important thing is when you make the payment, what should be the mode of payment? You make by cash, then only you will deduct TDS. You make the payment via banking channel, then you will deduct TDS. If you make the payment in the form of barter, then you will deduct TDS. So there were cases in Kanchenjunga Seafoods. What happened is that the charter fee, what is payable for the fishing vessels, the person has made in the form of fish. Now government will not say, I will say that I had made payment in the form of fish. I will send fishes to government. Whether they will accept it? No. I have made in Biocon, the amount was paid in the form of shares. So whether government will accept shares? No. Therefore, in these aspects where there is the payment is made in the asset form or something else, the tax would be deductible. The payer have to bear that tax, and the payer have to gross up the amount, and that much amount he has to deposit to the government, whether that amount he has available with him or not. Now, next concept which has came is Bitcoin's cryptocurrency. If I am making to somebody payment in the form of Bitcoins, in that case as well, I have to deduct TDS under section 195. Next slide. Friends, what till now we have seen is section 195 subsection 1, which covers any sum chargeable to tax, payment made by any payer to the non-resident. Specific aspect we have covered. Now we have to compare it with DTAA, double taxation avoidance agreement. Now what is this double taxation avoidance agreement? To avoid double taxation, agreements are signed between two countries which are termed as DTAA, or we term it as a treaty. India has signed more than 100 DTAA, and overall there are 3,000 treaties signed with different countries. Now, DTAA is classified as bilateral treaties and multilateral treaties. If there is a signing between two countries, that is bilateral. But if the sign is being made between different countries, 5, 6 more countries means more than 2 countries, it would be treated as multilateral treaties. Next slide, please. For treaty, we refer certain model. One is OECD model, UN model, US model. OECD model focus mainly on the residence-based taxation. And OECD prefers those countries which are already developed. But India is not a developed country. It is a developing country. Therefore, we follow UN model, United Nations model. It emphasizes on source-based taxation. And India has also started following residence plus source-based taxation. US model. US is a separate country. It has its own monopoly. They are already developed country, and therefore US have their own strategies. India has adopted US, United States model only in case of signing treaty between India and United States. Next slide, please. Now, when we will look at the treaty aspect, in Income Tax Act, we have different sections. There we have different articles. While following those articles, this specific points we have to consider in mind. First is preamble. Preamble is the most important part of any treaty, which specifically mentions that why this treaty is being made, what is the object behind this treaty. There should not be the object to take treaty benefit. If you have made the treaty only to take the benefit of taxation, to take the benefit of lower taxation, then that treaty benefit would not be given to the SSE. Therefore, preamble is to be looked into. Second concept is dual resident concept. Suppose Mr. X is resident in India as well as he is resident in another country, US. US follows citizenship, therefore it will not apply here. But if we can see UK, United Kingdom, then he is a dual resident. Now, which country will charge the taxation in this respect? Then we have to go to tiebreaker rule. In tiebreaker rule, separate conditions are given, and then only residential status of assessee is being calculated. As we have seen business connection, there is an article 5(7) in the treaty which talks about permanent establishment. Permanent establishment are classified on the basis of service P. Suppose an employee of foreign company is working in India, he is working for more than certain days, then it would be classified as a permanent establishment on the basis of services rendered by him. Agency P, on the basis of dependent agent and independent agent, the person is creating a PE. There is a concept of construction PE also. If you are doing construction for this much of period, then you are having a permanent establishment in India. Different treaties have different number of days limit. Next is make available clause. This is also known as fees for included services. As we have in our Income Tax Act, fees for technical services, in DTAA, we have a concept of fees of included services. It means that if I am taking any services from a person, like I am learning something, and then I am again delivering that thing to third person. If that third person understand that thing, it is treated as fees for included services. Next is MFN clause. MFN, most favored nation clause. Most favored nation clause signifies it forms part of protocol of every treaty. For example, if India-Spain treaty has tax rate of 10% and we are following India-Germany where the tax rate is 20, then if that country has MFN clause, we can take benefit of 10% of rate. Then limitation of benefit clause, if in both treaty tax is not levied, that is double non-taxation. You can't do that. You say that for double taxation, we want treaty benefit. So what will happen in case of double non-taxation? In case of double non-taxation, if there is a limitation of benefit clause in the treaty, then that protocol will prevail. That is, you cannot take both the benefits together. Then protocol are the rules which are mentioned at the end of the treaty. Next slide, please. As we have seen proviso in the Income Tax Act, proviso in the DTAA, now a new concept which has came is multilateral instrument. What happened is, next slide. What is the background behind multilateral instrument? G20 countries 6 to 7 years back were discussing that multinational enterprises, that is multinational corporations, are shifting their base of taxation from one country to another, and they are doing business in tax haven countries and evading taxes. They are not paying taxes in any country. They are trying to find out those countries like Cyprus, or we have Mauritius, or we have Singapore. All these countries, either the taxation is very low or there is no charge. In Dubai, there is no charge of income tax on the salaried individuals, or there is no income tax. Therefore, people were shifting their base from one country to another. So what to be done? They have to change the treaties. But we have 3,000 treaties with other countries. Now changing 3,000 treaties is very difficult, and therefore in this meeting they have decided that we will come with a multilateral instrument. There is an action plan 15 of BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting. There are 15 action plans of BEPS which is being recognized, and 15th action plan is multilateral instrument which was accepted. India has ratified it. There is a concept like how you will accept that multilateral instrument. So the concept is that till the 5 countries sign, India has signed with the 5 countries. So 5 countries has agreed that date would be accepted, and after that date, 3 months, the next financial which will come, that is on June 2019, it was ratified. India has ratified it. And the next financial year, that is 1st April 2020, multilateral instrument is being accepted in the Indian tax laws. Next slide, please. These are the MLI timelines. That is 2013, BEPS section plan was submitted. 2015, a group has been formed for developing MLI. 2015 October, BEPS final package measure was accepted. November 16, MLI was adopted by the group, and June 17, first signing ceremony was taken place. Next slide. At present, 29 countries, which is mentioned in the slide, has accepted India's choice for MLI. For these 29 countries, whenever you will make the payment, you have to look into the CTA, that is covered tax agreement. Now, what will happen is that for these 29 countries, we have to read DTAA with an amended protocol, amended provision, which is included in the form of MLI. And for this, for simplicity, they have came out with a synthesized text. Please, next slide. Synthesized text. What is synthesized text? To understand the MLI aspect, they have brought out with a synthesized text. As we have to refer treaty along with multilateral instrument, therefore consolidated version of all the covered tax agreement are known as synthesized text. This is for the reference of easy understanding, and this is not a legal document. Synthesized text is available on the income tax website of India, and this we can go through before making payment to non-resident. This is not a legal document. You cannot present in court of law that on the basis of synthesized text we did this. The synthesized texts are not at all wrong. They are perfectly fine as per the MLI provisions and as per the covered tax agreements. But it is not a legal document. They have mentioned it on the income tax website. Next, please. OECD has brought in this MLI database matching. Whenever you will visit the OECD website, they have mentioned when India has ratified it, when India has signed MLI, when Singapore has signed the MLI, when it has ratified it. Now, when we go in depth for the MLI provisions, then we have to look into whether certain minimum standards are being followed or not. Like, for example, Action Plan 1 is on the digital economy. This is a minimum standard. India has adopted this standard in the form of equalization levy. Then for transfer pricing, there is a CBCR reporting, country by country reporting, that we have already accepted, and we are filing CBCR reports as well. Therefore, MLI, whether minimum standards are followed,
Neelam, is it audible?
No, she is not audible.
Shweta, are you there? Shweta, I think connection is lost, right?
I guess so.
Shweta, are you back?
She left. She will be joining again, I guess.
She joined again. Shweta, are you there? Shweta, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah, Shweta, are you there?
Yes,
Yeah,
I am here. Getting
yeah.
the voice? Fine. So we are on MLI.
Yes, MLI, yes.
Yeah, MLI matching database. I am closing my video because some problem is coming in the network. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, it's fine.
That's
Continue
okay.
without video.
Bandwidth, possibly
Yeah,
bandwidth
sure.
issues there, yeah.
There is an MLI matching database which is very useful, which covers every aspect of India as well as other countries, whether they have adopted MLI, when they have adopted it, when they have accepted it, minimum standard, everything is being measured in this MLI matching database. Then next part, next slide. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Next slide, it is moved.
The slide is MLI and Section 195. Form 15 CB certification. I'm not able to visualize it.
Are you able
It's
to
not
see
visible.
that?
No, you are able to see that?
We
Nillam,
all
are you
are
able to see the
able.
slide?
Yeah, I am able.
Okay, fine. So Article 4 of MLI, dual resident entities. So in case of dual resident entities, what happens is that if you are resident of two countries, you have to decide for taxation purpose which one country you would be treated as resident. For example, Indian company make payment to a foreign company in US, but it has POEM in UK. POEM, that is place of effective management in UK. Therefore, after MLI has came, we have to go for MAP, that is mutual agreement procedure, and through MAP only we can find out whether that person would be treated as resident in India or not. Then we have Article 7 of MLI, principal purpose test, that is for taking treaty benefit. You are not taking the treaty benefit just for evasion of taxes, but for the benefits which are being available to everybody. Then Article 12 of MLI, it covers commissionerate arrangement. What happened till now is that you have to divide, that is whether the arrangement is preparatory and auxiliary, or whether that arrangement which is made with the assessee is a specific arrangement. So people were trying to misuse it, and therefore what they have said that if the activities are preparatory and auxiliary, then also it will be treated as permanent establishment in India. Next slide, please. Article 13 of MLI. Here, that preparatory and auxiliary we have covered. Now there is a concept of splitting up of contract. What happened is that if you have 120 days presence in India, you have done construction activity in India, then it would be deemed to be treated as a permanent establishment in India. Now what people have started doing is that rather than showing 120 days they are present in India, they have splitted that activity, given it to two contractors. For one contractor, it is for 60 days, another for 60 days. They were splitting the contract and they were evading the PE aspect, permanent establishment. Therefore, in MLI Article 14, they have covered that splitting up of contract would be treated as PE in India. Next slide, please. Rates of TDS that we have already discussed also. In section 195(1), it is mentioned rates which are in force, and rates which are in force is given in part 2 of the first schedule to the Finance Act. Next slide. Next slide, please. Coming to the procedural aspect. This was all about the provisions given in Income Tax Act, DTAA and MLI. That is, once you have decided, yes, the person we are making payment to non-resident and it is taxable, rate of tax is decided. Now procedurally, you need certain documents from that non-resident. First important document is TRC, that is tax residency certificate, which specified that the person is resident of that particular country. If he is resident of that particular country, then he will be eligible to get DTAA benefit. If he will not submit TRC to us, we will not give him DTAA benefit. With the BAPS coming into action, that is MLI coming into action, there is a concept of beneficial ownership. So what beneficial ownership is says that whenever I am making payment to Mr. X, I have to see that he is the beneficial owner. It would not be like that the payment is just going to Mr. X, but the beneficial owner is Mr. Y. There is a phrase which is used: the secret of success is to own nothing but to control everything. The person who is controlling the thing would be treated as the beneficial owner in MLI scenario. Next slide, please. In treaties, the tax rates are lower as compared to the Income Tax Act, and therefore every assessee would like to take the treaty benefit. But for taking treaty benefit, you have to submit TRC. With TRC, you have to submit Form 10F. 10F, we have this 6 classification. What is the status of assessee, PAN of assessee, nationality of country or specified territory, assessee tax identification number, what's his period of residential status, and address of assessee. If these points are not covered, then TRC is not valid for giving DTAA benefit. Therefore, with TRC, we will take 10F for giving him DTAA benefit. Next slide. TRC in other countries. In India, there is no concept in TRC. When we apply for Form 10F in India, there only these things are incorporated. They have not incorporated the concept of beneficial owner, or they have not incorporated principal purpose test in the TRC itself. Therefore, let's see how our Indian government will take the TRC aspect. But UK and Australia, they have in their TRC certificate a clause of beneficial owner. Hello. Yeah. And also, hello.
तो जा ले और
Yes,
छोटा
ma'am, you are audible.
Shweta,
I
continue.
request other attendees to please be on mute.
Yeah, please keep your mics on mute. Shweta, continue.
Sure. For Australia, they have included in their TRC the aspect that whether you are dual resident of any country, whether you are resident of only Australia or you have residential status of another country as well, they have already included in that. But our country has not included it till now about the beneficial owner concept, but it is under consideration. Next important section is 206AA. Next slide. 206AA, we all are very much familiar with it. It says that if you does not have PAN, then tax rate would be 20%. Yes. Then next slide. But 206AA, we have a clause that PAN not required in case if the income is in the nature of interest, royalty, fees for technical services or capital gain, if you will submit certain basic information. Previously, it was compulsory that PAN is required to take benefit of lower deduction. But now they have said that for certain categories of income, if you don't have PAN, but if you will submit basic information, TRC, tax identification number, then tax would not be deducted at 20%. Next slide, please. Next, yes. Now surcharge and education cess and grossing up. Now for DTAA rates, we don't have to apply surcharge and education cess, but on income tax rates, we have to apply surcharge and education cess. First, we will decide like what is the rate given in Income Tax Act. It is 20%, but in DTAA it is 10%. Then we will apply the 10% rate, whichever is beneficial to the assessee. Now grossing up of tax would be done. Section 195A. What is grossing up? I am remitting 100 rupees, but the person has not agreed that the tax should be deducted. Therefore, in that case, we have to do grossing up. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. So there is a company, X company, foreign company having a PAN in India, has agreed to provide certain technical services to Y company for a fee of ₹100. Now, as per first schedule of Part 2 of the Finance Act, the rate of taxation including surcharge and cess is 11.128 and tax rate as per DTAA is 10%. We have to calculate TDS. Grossing up, we have to do for 100 rupees. Next slide, please. Tax rate which is applicable is 10%. Therefore, 100 rupees which is grossed up, increased income under section 195A, which will come to 111.11. And therefore, the tax which is deductible is 111.11 multiply 10%, which comes to TDS under section 195 rupees 11.11. Next slide, please. Suppose the person do not furnish pen in this case. In that case, the tax would be 22.22. The tax would be computed as same 11.11 gets doubled in case the SC does not furnish pen. Next slide, please. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Continue.
Next slide. Direct go to 195.2, slide 52.
It's on slide 52.
Yeah. So section 195.2, what it says is lower deduction of certificate. It is applicable to the payer. Payer, while making the payment, applies to the assessing officer that tax is deductible at a lower rate. Suppose the assessee is not getting proper order. In that case, he can file appeal under section 248. But if the payee is ready to bear the tax, in that case, the assessee would not be eligible to file any appeal. Next slide. Whether under section 195(2), assessee can go for nil withholding certificate. Yes, in case of Mangalore refinery, it is said that assessee can go for nil withholding certificate. But in certain another cases, that is graphite industries, they have said that nil withholding certificate cannot be applied. But practical purposes for nil withholding or lower withholding, both cases, we are going under section 195(2) on behalf of payer. Next slide. Whether it is compulsory, most of the courts have decided yes, applying under section 195(2) is compulsory, but we have already seen GE India Technology decision, which clarifies that it is not compulsory to take withholding tax certificate if you are sure that tax would be deductible on certain amount. Next, 195 subsection 3. 195 subsection 3 talks about application by non-resident payee. Payee is going for getting nil withholding certificate or lower withholding certificate. Once he obtained the certificate, he gives that certificate to every payer, and the payer is not responsible to deduct any TDS on that. But in this case, he has to follow certain condition. Payee, that is a non-resident, he can go only if he is a regular assessee, he is not a defaulter, he has fixed asset in India exceeding 50 lakhs rupees. If he follows this condition, then only he can take 195(3) benefit, else he do not get certificate of lower withholding under section 195(3). If the payee is not complying certain these conditions, then he has option to obtain 195 certificate, but under section 197. Slide 57. The certificate once obtained under 195 is valid till the financial year ends until cancelled by the assessing officer. Either the financial year has ended or either the assessing officer has cancelled the certificate. Till that time, the certificate remains valid. When he should file subsequent application? After the expiry of period of validity. Once the certificate expiry of period is there, then he can apply for the new certificate, or within 3 months he can apply for the certificate. Then slide 58. 195 subsection 7. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
You are
yeah.
audible.
Shweta, you're
Subsection 7, slide 58. It says CBDT to specify certain class of persons, but till now CBDT has not specified any class of persons, and therefore there is no relevance of section 195 subsection 7. Then 197, the payee would go for 197 certificate and he can apply for lower deduction of certificate. Then there is a recent notification on this which says that till 30th June 2020, whatever lower deduction certificate you had obtained last year, that will remain continued. But only if you have applied for current year certificate, that is financial year 2021 certificate. If you have not applied for financial year 2021 certificate, then you have to apply to assessing officer via email containing all the documentation, and once you have submitted all the documentation, then they will grant you lower deduction certificate for 2021. But till it has not been obtained, then old certificate with old amount will remain continued. Slide 63. Now foreign exchange rates. Whenever you will make payment, whatever foreign exchange rates you will apply, that is TT buying rate of State Bank of India. We have to consider that. Suppose you are making $10,000 remittance, which rate of exchange you should apply is State Bank of India TT buying rate of that day. That day means deduction date. It is not payment date. For exchange rate computation, you have to look at the deduction date. Suppose there is a fluctuation in case of deduction date and payment date, it will not impact TDS at all. And this is clarified in Sandvik Asia Limited IT80 Pune decision. Next is next slide, please. 64. Documentation part. Most important part in case of 195 is the documentation. For computing TDS, for making remittances, for 15 CACB, you need documentation. Section 195 is similarly becoming like an auditor is doing audit. What documentation you need is first look at whether they have agreement, the person who is making the remittance and the non-resident receiving the amount. If agreement or contract is not there, any invoice is there. Invoice is not there, any email is there, or any conversation, any confirmation is there. You can visit non-resident website. Whether that non-resident has any PE in India or not, through website we can find out. Like generally we make payments to Google or Gmail, or we make payment to Facebook, whether they have any presence in India or not. Then TRC we need, suppose TRC is not available, then we will ask assessee that give us the application of TRC, at least you would have applied for TRC. Or we will ask him that you will give us an indemnity bond that yes, I have applied for TRC, and if in future any complication is there or if any penalty will come to you, and in that case we will bear the loss. That is, non-resident person will bear the loss on behalf of payer. Next slide. This is the return confirmation we need at present. That is, you are the beneficiary of the sum. That is the amount you are getting. You are the whole sole beneficiary. The beneficiary is not another person. If he has obtained any certificate under 195(3) or 197, we will take from him. There is an ICI guidance note on audit reports and certificates. We will refer that as well. Now, declaration post MLI. Next slide. After MLI, the most important thing is that we have to take these declarations that your motive is not to take a treaty benefit. You are the real owner, beneficial owner. Non-resident pay is not a shell or a conduit company. And all necessary facts you have disclosed to the payer while making, while the payer has taken services from you. Next slide. Consequences of non or short deduction of TDS. If you have not deducted tax, or if there is a short deduction of TDS, then there would be disallowance of expenses. You have to pay interest to the government. You have to pay penalty amount to the government. Next slide. If as a chartered accountant, you have given a wrong certificate, 15 CB, issued a wrong 15 CB, in that case, penalty of 10,000 you have to pay as a chartered accountant. And in case assessee is furnishing wrong information, then he has to bear 1 lakh per default as a penalty. Therefore, the consequences are very high, and there is a prosecution if failure to pay tax deducted. If tax is not paid, there is a prosecution under section 276B, minimum 3 months to 7 years. Next slide. Refund of withholding taxes. Whether the assessee can claim refund if he has paid extra amount of TDS. Yes, it is available under Income Tax Act, but it says that within 2 years of payment of sum, you have to claim refund from government. If you have not claimed it within 2 years, then you will not get benefit of refund from government. Next slide. Now coming into the procedural, 15 CA and CB forms. 15 CA and CB forms, there was FEMA requirement in 1997 that there is, for every certificate we were taking NOC from the department, no objection certificate, that CA certificate is not an alternative. Then in 2009, they brought in the concept of 15 CA CB. Next slide. And from 1st October 2013, the procedural part has changed. When we have to report the foreign remittances, whenever the person responsible for paying to a non-resident, not being a company or to a foreign company, any sum, whether chargeable under the provision, shall provide this information in 15 CA and in 15 CB. I am on slide 73.
Yes, it is on 73.
Yeah, rule 37BB. There is a rule in relation to 15 CA-CB which states that 15 CA is to be filed and submitted online by the deductor. 15 CA is to be required for non-reportable transaction as well, but 15 CB is required only if payment exceeds 5 lakh rupees, and if the sum is chargeable to tax, then only you need 15 CB, else you do not need 15 CB. Next slide. For looking at 15 CA requirement, you have to see whether it is non-reportable or reportable. What transactions are non-reportable? Remittances which are permissible as per FEMA, and certain specified remittances. There are 33 remittances whose list is being given by the department. For those remittances, you do not need any 15 CA or CB requirement. And for reportable transaction, you need this forms. Slide 78. Slide. Yes. First, you have to see whether the payment is chargeable to tax. If it is not chargeable, then you have to see whether it is reportable or not. If it is reportable, just file 15 CA Part D. If it is not reportable, you do not need any documentation to be submitted. If the sum is chargeable to tax and it exceeds rupees 5 lakhs, then you have to see whether he has obtained AO certificate or not. If he has obtained AO certificate, then 15 CA Part B, else nothing. But if he has not obtained AO certificate, then you have to take 15 CB from chartered accountant plus 15 CA part C. And if the amount is less than 5 lakhs, then you have to file 15 CA part A. This is part A, B, C, and D. 15 CB as a chartered accountant, we have to give only when he has not obtained AO order and the amount exceeds rupees 5 lakh rupees. 15 CA is an e-filing facility. We need digital signature. This is being filed by the assessee, but generally assessee contacts his chartered accountant to file form 15 CA. Therefore, chartered accountant files 15 CB plus CA on behalf of client. He has to file following details: name and address of the remitter. These details are to be filed in all the forms, whether it is A, B, C, or D, any form he has to file. 15 CB is required to be filed online and digital signature is compulsory. Assessee have to add CA to his profile. Previously, 15 CB and 15 CA were through the TIN facility, TIN website, a tax deduction number, that website we were using. But before some time, Income Tax Department has included in the income tax e-filing utility itself. Then while filing 15 CB, we need UDIN from ICAI, and now there is a separate column in 15 CB where we can mention UDIN requirement. Then we have to give details of remitter to whom we are making the remittances. PAN or TAN of the remitter is compulsory. If grossing up done, all these details are to be shown. Now, the most important point, some examples we are covering. Suppose I am making payment through credit card. Whether I need 15 CA and CB? If it is chargeable to tax, then yes. In case of credit card also, nobody is there to look after the payment, but I must take 15 CB from my chartered accountant. I must file 15 CA and keep all this document with myself itself. Whenever assessing officer demands the certificates, I can present those certificates to assessing officer. What happens in case of reimbursement of expenses? If it is chargeable to tax, then yes, on that as well, I have to take 15 CACB. If it is not chargeable to tax, then there is no requirement. Last slides 82. Procedure for remittance. Friends, whatever points we have seen, it is covered in this slide. 82, next slide. First, we have to look whether the payment is covered under section 195. Then we have to look all the basic documents, factual documents. Then we have to look classification of transaction on the basis of nature of income. We have to see whether it is taxable as per domestic law. Then we have to see whether DTAA provisions are applicable. If yes, beneficial of the two. We have to take all the documents, TRC 10F, tax rate applied, 15 CBCA or lower deduction certificate taken. All these things are done, then we will finally remit the amount to the assessee. Friends, what is the way forward of this complete procedures we are looking into? We are moving towards digital taxation. GAR provisions are already applied from 2017. GAR and PPT, yes, we have to discuss more on these aspects. We are working in cloud and cloud is moving from here to there. How we will find the presence of person? For 195, it will be a difficult scenario in future that how to find the presence of person in India or any other country. In GST, we have concept of one nation, one tax, but for sure after this digital taxation, all countries have to come together. We must have a one country or all countries and one tax. And all the countries together collect the tax amount, and then every country will decide how much portion belongs to which country. Thank you so much, friends, for patiently listening, and have a stay safe. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Shweta, for the brilliant session. Believe me, my eyes were not taken up from the PPT and my ears were completely in sync with your the voice. So thank you again. It was a really good session. We have few questions if you allow me to ask.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So one question is there was a slide wherein you talked about the government department. So question is whether the government department also includes the public sector units. We'll go to that slide.
No, no. Public sector units are not covered.
Public sector units are not covered in this, right? So that is one point. Uh, Second question is about this MLI that you mentioned. The MLI, is it part of Income Tax Act or is it part of Double Taxation Agreement?
No, actually, MLI is a separate instrument. It is incorporated in Income Tax Act in a form of preamble. In this Finance Act 2020 only, they have incorporated preamble of MLI in the Income Tax Act. And how MLI to be read is that the provisions, the articles which are given in MLI, they have to read together with the DTAA. And when they both are read together, there is an agreement, that is CTA, covered tax agreement is being made, and this CTA is available in the form of synthesized text at income tax website. So clearly going, whenever you have to make payment to any country, that time you have to look at the synthesized text of that country.
So basically what will happen is you have to inculcate the Double Taxation Agreement, MLI, and come to that synthesized text on the income tax website. Yes. But again, you mentioned that this synthesized text cannot be quoted anywhere because it has no legal binding.
Right.
So, like, in case we derive any decision based on this text, and what if the department has a different view as far as our understanding is concerned, and if we are not able to bring it on table, what is the solace that we have?
No, actually synthesized text which is being available on the website, that is completely correct. But they have just given a line. Because of that line, we cannot come to a conclusion that it is not completely presentable in court of law. Because this has just started. They would surely amend these things on their, like they will come out with some conclusion for this.
Okay. Acha, one more question that we have is non-resident having a property in India, and as we understand, there is no lower deduction available to them. Now, if a person who is a resident of India making payment to the non-resident, he has to approach for a lower deduction certificate. Now, is there any standard operating process for this immovable property provided by the department, or maybe in any guidelines by ICAI?
There is no SOPs available for this. Only that is like we have different case laws. Few case laws says that you can deduct tax on the net amount, and the majority of case laws says that you have to deduct tax on the gross amount. If we will look at the definition given in Income Tax Act, what it says is that sum chargeable to tax. Now the sum chargeable to tax in this case is only capital gain amount. But because of the decisions of Income Tax Department, we have to deduct either at the gross amount or we have to apply for lower deduction certificate. For the safety of clients, that is he must not face any consequences in future. Therefore, we are going for 195 to lower deduction certificate. Only this option is available.
Okay. Anyone has any question, further question to ask? You're welcome to ask the question right now. I think we will close. Yeah, Shefali, please ask the query.
You can unmute your oneself also to ask a
Ha,
query at
yes.
us.
I think she is typing.
Yes.
So meantime she is typing. Shefali, Shweta, one more query about this extended date for uh, applications that were under 195.2 or other applications. Now we have 30th June as the date extended for the previous year's applications. Now you mentioned that
Yes,
we can also mail it to the departmental officer along with
yes,
the required
yes,
documents. What if we have
right.
not emailed it? See, there is a difference. A person who needs a certificate is supposed to mail it to the department officer, but the person who's
Right.
deducting the TDS may or may not be privy to that particular email. So,
No, person who is deducting TDS, he has to apply to officer. Deductor have to apply.
so that is 195.2, right?
Yes, if deductee is applying, then
Ha,
he has to submit. Yes, deductee if he has all the details and he is applying.
so that is 195.2 that he has applied. But this is also extended for 197, right?
For payee, deductee.
Ha,
Yes, Archana, I will clear it out. Deductor and deductee both can apply for it, either under 195.2 or for deductee 3 or 7, 197. Whoever wants to apply for it, they can apply via email. They will get those email from the like their income tax website itself. They have provided that this officer email ID is this. You can apply for it, or if they have details of some other officer or that officer is not there. Suppose what recently happened is that in one case the officer himself was being suffered because of this COVID. In that case, the officer who is being placed on his behalf, he has to apply to that officer. Only thing is that how you will get the database of the department, you have to visit their website and you will get all the details from that. They have posted over there.
okay. Acha, Shefali has a query. An NRI having an account in India and transfers from his account to NRE account. NRI having account in India is transferring the money to NRE account. Is a 15 CACB required? His savings from India is transferred.
No, there is no requirement. Actually, previously there was a circular which has came and which states that 15 C and CB is required. But after the provisions have been amended in law, there is no requirement of 15 CA and CB in this case. But bankers are demanding 15 CA CAB in this case. Practically, we are facing this problem, and therefore we are issuing 15 CA and CB in this case.
Okay, so there is no harm in issuing this, right?
No issues. There is no problem. There is no penalty if you are giving information to the department. Department has said that we don't need this information. Why department said that? Because they are getting that information through other forms. There are certain FEMA forms like A2. They are getting information through those forms. Therefore, they have stopped 15 CA in those cases. But if we are giving additional information, then income tax department has no issue with that.
Okay. Even a chartered accountant has no harm in issuing 15 CB, right?
No.
Okay. There is one more query from Vidhi. I have a doubt in case of 15 CB. Clearing and forwarding companies making payment to foreign shipping companies. This transaction is not taxable under Income Tax Act and they file 15 CA. But banks ask 15 CB for payment. In such case, what is to be done? Is it mandatory to get TRC even if the benefit of DTAA is not claimed?
This is specifically excluded under section 172. For shipping companies, we have section 172. And in that section, and this is not applicable. This section 195 itself is not applicable on shipping companies, 172 companies. And therefore, there is no requirement to comply with all these provisions.
But again, that bank requirement comes into picture.
Yes, that is a practical difficulty. In many cases, what happened is that if those people are not aware with the recent law, they are demanding for their safety, or they think that we have to be, because for bankers they have very high penalty. They have penalty till 5 crore of rupees for non-compliances of these certificates. Like if you have not taken the certificates from your like the deductor, therefore they are insisting for every payment.
So the query is, if I'm issuing a 15 CB as a chartered accountant, even though it is not taxable, do I need to get a copy of TRC from the foreign shipping company?
No need. TRC is required only if you have to take DTAA benefit. If you are not claiming DTAA, then there is no requirement. But if you are claiming DTAA benefit, then in that case TRC is required.
Okay. There is another query from Shefali. She's asking, in case of gift from father to a NRI son, is a 15 CACB required?
There is 918. There is a section which is incorporated. Previously, it was not there. Now it is there. But a gift from father up to $250,000, which is covered in liberalized remittance scheme. And therefore, till this amount, 15 CACB is not required, else it is required.
So there's a specific section to it. Yeah. I think one more query is there. Can you ask the query?
Actually, there are 2 persons who have raised their hand. I'm unable to track. One person have already posted.
Yes. So there is a query. Suppose a payment is made to non-resident of rupees 2,50,000, which is taxable under Income Tax Act. Now my query is, should I file 15 CB or not? 15 CB is required if it is more than 5 lakh. But as on that, I'm not sure if it will cross the 2,50,000 criteria.
5 lakh criteria is there. 2,50,000 was previously. The limit 250 was previous, but now it is 5 lakh. As it is not crossing 5 lakh limit today, therefore there is no need of 15 CB.
Okay. While another query from Dilip, while filing 15 CA Part D, bank insisting certificate from CA that payment does not cover TDS, so not filed from 15 CB. So you are in a catch situation. Either give 15 CB or you write a certificate saying that 15 CB is not required. So how valid is this other certificate saying that 15 CB is not required? And
No,
again, you need to generate a UDI and all things.
No, here they have to, like for our safety, we will issue 15 CB only. We will not give a letter for this.
Yeah, so if it is not falling in the line and not taxable, 15 CB is not required. It is upon bank to take the call, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay, Shweta, thank you so much for all the input that you have shared today and a lot of thoughts, brainstorming. 15 CA, 15 CB, MLI, 195, Google ruling, Vodafone ruling. Thank you so much. It was really a brilliant session, and I thank you on behalf of Shweta team and the entire women group from our team and everyone. Thank you so much again. We will close for the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thanks a lot.
much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye.